This is Commanding Leadership. I'm your host, Max Harrigan. Let's get after it. Welcome to Commanding Leadership, your bottom line up front of how to lead and win in business and military operations. This is episode 26. On today's episode, I'll be having a discussion with someone who can definitely deliver a ton of value to you across all aspects of leadership. My guest today is Jon Rennie, co-founder and CEO of Peak Demand Incorporated, and the best-selling author of I Have the Watch, Becoming a Leader Worth Following. Jon has over 30 years of military and business leadership experience, and I'm just super excited to get to pick his brain today on all of his experiences. So without further ado, Jon, thank you very much for coming on to the show, and welcome.
Thanks, Max. Good to be here.
So I've got to say, you have quite the resume. 5 years as a Cold War submarine naval officer, 22 as a leader in corporate America, and 5 as a CEO of a startup manufacturing company. That's just incredible.
Yes.
So maybe we start this thing off by digging in a little bit into your early life, maybe before you joined the military, and kind of just talk about maybe who you were growing up and what eventually led you to joining the military.
Okay, sure. You know, I think early on, I grew up in a blue-collar family, blue-collar environment. Everybody worked, had blue-collar type jobs. I had 2 grandfathers that served in World War II. One was in the Army and one was in the Navy. And they both had a really big influence on my life. So they were, they're my heroes, right? They were the guys that I looked up to, and I heard their stories. And I just, for me, there was no other choice but to join the military and do what my grandfathers did. So, and in my time, we didn't have, it wasn't the World War II or the Vietnam or the Korea. We had the Cold War, right? So I joined up during the time when Reagan was president and they were building a big Navy, and, the submarines played a really critical role in the Cold War. And there was just something fascinating about that, that idea of underwater operations, underwater warfare, that just, I don't know what, some guys are attracted to flying jets. I was attracted to submarines. I just had to get on them. There was something fascinating about them. And it was a dream to one day get on a submarine and be an officer and serve. And so that was a dream I had even from junior high school. So I knew going into high school, going into college, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And everything I did was to get to the fleet, get to the submarines. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I've got to ask, being an Army guy,
Yeah.
What's it like being underwater for all that time as a naval submarine officer?
So it's just like going to work one day and then somebody locking the doors and you're stuck with 150 of your closest friends for 3 months at a time. That's what it's like. I mean, you don't ever leave, right? So you're with the same people day in and day out, 24/7, until you go home, and after about 80 or 90 days. So it's just like going to work and never going home.
Oh man, so there must be a lot of stress that comes along with being in that confined space with all the same people for that long. How'd you handle that?
So there's a lot of stress, especially in the beginning when you're not qualified, when you're not wearing what they call the dolphins, which means you're submarine qualified. So when you first get on board, you're considered what they call a nub, which is a non-useful body. And so you're basically wasting air and wasting food for everyone else until you become qualified. So there's a high level of stress, and it's mostly placed on yourself because you don't want to be there and eating the food and drink and breathing the air and not contributing, right? You don't have your brother's back, right? So you want to get qualified as quickly as possible. So there's a high level of stress when you're unqualified. But once you get qualified and you learn the job, it's just like any other job. You become better and better at it over the course of many patrols. And I made 7 patrols, made 7 deployments during my time, and by the end, I was very experienced. I was training the young people, but how do we relieve stress? We had a little gym in the submarine, so we had treadmills we could run on or ride the bike just to burn off some energy. But it can be stressful at times. Yes.
So what was it like leading on a submarine? 'Cause you were an ensign, right, when you first went on?
Sure. I started as an 01, which is like the lowest of the lowest officers,
Oh, yeah.
right? So
a butter bar, right?
A butter bar. I was definitely a butter bar. Yeah. So the one thing about leading on a submarine that's kind of unique is that you're with your people 24/7, right? So you don't ever get away from your team. I used to tell my wife that I just want to hear my first name. For 3 months, I haven't heard my first name. I was Lieutenant Rennie or Mr. Rennie for 24/7, right? So you're very close with your team. You're there every day. So you develop deep relationships, unlike you would maybe with some other jobs. So I think early on I learned that relationships are really important for leadership, right? You build a deep relationship for each of the people that you work with.
Yeah, it's huge. And I can definitely tell that's one of the prevailing themes in your book.
Yes.
Building relationships with teams.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yes. That's awesome. So I guess my next question for you would be, did you always want to be a leader? I know you'd grown up wanting to be in the military, but was it always as an officer or even moving into corporate America to be a leader out there? What kind of drew you to leadership?
I think partly because I saw, well, first of all, to be a leader in the military, that was just a dream, a desire, and it was the outcome of a long effort to get there. I wanted to serve as a naval officer, not so much from the leadership side of it, but just to serve my country. That was something I wanted to do. When I got out, though, I realized that the leadership in corporate America was pretty crappy, right? So I think I was drawn to leadership mostly to fix what I was seeing around with different leaders. I just thought, well, wait a second, I can do better than that, right? And so I think maybe I saw a lot of bad examples of leadership, and I thought, well, I think maybe this is my calling. I think I need to go into this because I think I can do a lot better job than these other guys or these other people.
So what did you see that was crappy in leadership outside?
I'll tell you, I got hired in my first job outside the military, and they put me in a cubicle in the back of the engineering department. I was a design engineer, and I didn't get a computer for about 6 weeks, and the only thing I had was a stapler, and I still have that stapler, by the way, but I didn't know what to do. I had a boss that hired me, and he didn't really tell me what to do, so I would just hook up with other people in the engineering department, see what they were doing. I tried to help them out, but I didn't have a computer. It was just really poor. You think about corporate life. A lot of people come into jobs they've trained their whole life for, right? They're going to be an accountant or an engineer or a nurse or a doctor. They train their whole lives, right? And they get that dream job. They're finally in their dream job. And then, they're excited to be there. They're 100% engaged, right? And then over time, when people just ignore them or don't listen to them, or they just feel like nobody cares about their contributions to the organization, they become disengaged over time, to the point where there's 70% of employees today are disengaged. But it doesn't start that way. We start off really excited, and then we just kind of fade off. And that's what I saw a lot of in corporate America, is excited people just like, after a while, they just say, you know what, I'm just going to do my job, keep my head down, and go home, and that's sad. I hate to see that.
It is sad. I mean, figure a new kid coming out of college these days, he spent, $100,000 to get a degree.
Yes.
Even not out of college, just, out of high school, wherever.
Right.
You put in all this effort to get a job, because it's not easy to get a job these days, right? And then you get just stuck in a cubicle, and no one pays attention to you. Nobody engages with you or tries to mentor you.
Right.
Nobody takes you under their wing.
Right.
In the military, we have this thing called sponsorships, and I don't know if it's just a National Guard thing, but when a new soldier comes to the unit, we have this whole checklist that these soldiers have to complete, and it goes along with meeting their frontline leader, getting their contact information, all the basic necessities that someone should know from day one. And I don't know, in corporate America, any job that I've had, we've never really had something like that.
No, you're kind of left to your own devices. And the other thing is that one thing I loved about the military is there's a qualification program, right? To get to the next level, you have a very clear cut. Okay, well, I need to learn these skills. I have to perform these duties, and then you get to the next level. And what's nice about that is that every leader you're served with, if they're wearing a certain rank or a certain insignia, they've had to go through a bare minimum amount of effort to get to that level, right? So you had instant respect for your commanding officer, right, who's an 06, captain, and what he's been through, right? So you have tremendous respect for it. versus going to work for a company and there's a general manager that, how did he get that job? This person is not qualified for that job. So I think one thing the military did a really good job is making sure that leaders were qualified to do their job, versus that's not always the case in business.
So how do you think we get there? Because there is this divide between the military and business, and I think that's kind of what we both speak about on both our podcasts, trying to kind of bridge that gap, right? Take the lessons we learned from the military and apply them to the business world.
Right.
So in your case, throughout your time in corporate America, now as a CEO of your own company, how have you found ways to kind of bridge that divide to really show people that there's a clear path for them in business, and like a rank progression or stuff like that?
Yeah, I probably don't do a good enough job myself, so I criticize that, but it's really hard to do, right? If you think about like as a general manager, I have an engineering department, I have a production department, I have a quality department, so I have all these different departments, and for me to develop growth plans for each department till you get to the top, and then maybe you get to a general manager position. So it's a little bit hard, but what I have done over the years is look for talent in the organization. So trying to find those people that kind of go above and beyond, and that need to be challenged. And I look for those people to give them challenging assignments, to test them a little bit, to see if they're ready to go to the next level. And then those are the ones that I try to pick for succession planning and things like that. But no, I don't think that, I think maybe there's a need for a sort of a qualification program, if you will, in business. I don't have one today, but I do look for talent, and I do look for people that are stepping outside their comfort zone, people who volunteer for all the extra assignments, and they're willing to do the extra stuff. So those are the people I'm looking for when I'm looking for succession planning and moving people into management roles.
Definitely. I think you mentioned on one of your prior episodes, grit, right? Grit.
Yeah, grit. Yeah.
Because anybody who is willing to persevere through things can do anything, something of that nature.
Yeah, passion and persistence, right? So if you have that combination of passion and persistence, and you have that grit, Angela Duckworth talks about that, and you have that grit, you're likely going to be successful. Things that will slow most people down won't slow you down. And I'm looking for people like that have that grit, that persistence, that willingness to go even when the odds are stacked against them. Yeah,
that's huge. One of my biggest sayings is, with a little bit of respect, data, and just a passion, and you can accomplish anything.
Yes. Yeah. Very true.
It's just it's amazing what we have at our fingertips right now with just the, you got data visualization software, you got all these different leadership training programs that are out there, and just somebody just has to take the initiative, and they have the ability to grow well beyond anything they thought was imaginable.
Yes, absolutely. I was just talking to my wife tonight about this is an interesting time to be alive, because there's so much information available to us that we can get very quickly. So if you want to be better, like YouTube, for example, right? I mean, when I came up, we didn't have YouTube, right? So, I mean, if you want to learn something about anything, you can pick, go online, search it, and you're going to find hundreds, thousands of videos on that particular topic. So you can learn very fast. So if you have just an ounce of motivation these days, you can become an amazing leader, or businessman, entrepreneur. So the opportunities are really big these days, I think.
Yeah, they're huge. YouTube is a wonderful tool. I tell my wife all the time. So let's move into a little bit more about leadership.
Sure.
So effective leadership. What is that? Why is effective leadership so important to you in an organization?
Okay, I think I say sometimes in my writings that leadership matters. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if you can take the same group of people with a bad leader, and there'll be a poor performing organization. You take that same group of people with a good leader, and there'll be a high performing group of people. So leadership matters. Leadership will make the difference between a mediocre performing organization and a high performing organization. So leadership matters. So what is leadership? What does it come right down to? Well, there's three things that get involved with leadership, right? So it's motivating people towards a goal. So it's three things: motivation, people, and a goal, right? And those are the three main elements of leadership. And the thing is, people get put into leadership positions and they forget about people, the motivation, and the goal. They get working on their email, or they get, I got a big presentation to do, or I got to go visit customers. All these things take away from people, the motivation, and a goal. So if you get yourself back to what really matters in leadership, it's taking a group of people, making sure you have the right people in the organization, motivate them correctly towards, and make sure that the goal is very clear, that you communicate the goal, they understand what the mission is of the organization, and you talk about that every day. This is our mission, this is how we're doing towards the mission, this is what we got to do to get better. So it's getting back to those basics of leadership and stop worrying about get away from being a doer and get into being a leader. That's really what makes the difference for taking a good organization and making it great.
Do you think any one of those three elements is more important than the other in leadership?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I say leadership is a people business. So people is a big part of what I say that is really important, is that recognizing that people are people, and that everybody reacts to motivation differently. Everybody reacts to criticism differently. Everybody, you can't take a cookie cutter approach to leadership. You have to get to know your people and get to know what makes them tick. And if you can dive into the people side of the business, I think you can understand the motivation side a little easier, and then you can also communicate the goals and objectives a little easier. So if there's one, I always put people on top. In my book, I have the leadership triangle I draw, and I put people on top, and not the leader on top. So that's the problem. Some people put the leader on top. The leader is actually in the center of the triangle, and that's the conductor. They're coordinating between the people, the motivation, and the goal. So.
That's so key. I was just actually at an officer professional development session, maybe about a couple of weeks ago, and there was a retired major general who was there, and he spoke about with the moment he first learned about what leadership truly was, and the story was about him getting into a trench where there was a bunch of water and ammo was buried underneath. But the ultimate objective of the story was to show that leadership is all about service and serving your people. And when people are served, they're more willing to go above and beyond for their leader. They become motivated, and they begin to achieve the goals that the leader wants them to achieve because they're being served. Right. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. I think service is one, but I think just the point that as a leader that nothing is, you wouldn't ask somebody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. I think that's where I see service play into it. So in my role as a CEO of a manufacturing company, I have a small company. We have a manufacturing shop, and when it gets busy, I just put my boots on and I go out and I work the line. Right? Yeah. I just go and help out. And when the guys see me out there, it's fun. We joke, we have a good time, but then, it's also, wow, the CEO's out here helping us out. And I think that it shows that we're all in it together, right? We all have different roles in the organization, but we're in it together. And I think that's probably the biggest message I try to deliver to my team, is that we're in this together. I might have a different roles and responsibility than you, but I'm not more important than you. I just have a different role. I have different responsibilities. So
it's just about getting the job done, right?
And it's about celebrating the results. I mean, we had just today we had an incredible afternoon of production. I just wandered out on the shop floor. I saw the numbers, and I just started talking. The shift was over. Everybody was starting to pack up, and I just was talking to the guys. I'm like, man, it was a great day. We got a lot out, and man, it's amazing. You guys did a great job. And they're like, yeah, everything's flowed. Everybody, it was exciting. It was exciting because they felt pride, and then the boss noticed, and so it's just, it brings it all together.
It does.
Yeah.
Just today, actually, I'm in a production environment
Oh,
myself.
nice. Okay. Yeah.
And it was the end of the day, and they had a very good day. And I'm walking through the shop floor, and I just look at one of the accessory installers that we have, and I'm like, hey, so and so, you did a great job today.
Yeah.
And the smile that came across his face, it was just like awesome to see him smile and say, oh, thanks, Max.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
good.
nice to connect with employees on that level.
It is
Even
good.
if it's as simple as just, hey, thank you, or you did a good job.
Right.
Those simple little moments are, one, which it's really great for the employee, but two, it's nice as a leader to be able to make that impact on somebody.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's really good. It's funny because some leaders don't take that time, right? So, I have I had a really good manager that worked for me one time, and he was just a hard worker, good guy, got so much done as a leader. But sometimes he would go through the shop floor. We were in a manufacturing plant back then. He would go through the shop floor and he'd have his head down because he was off to get something done, right? And I remember we were having I would do these birthday meetings. So we'd have like 10 or 12 employees meet with the general manager. I do it every month. So if it was your birthday that month, you would meet with the general manager. It would just be a, kind of casual conversation. And in one of those meetings, I had one of my employees say, you've got one of your managers that doesn't care about us. I'm like, which one? I'm like, I'm really trying to create the right environment. And when they mentioned the manager's name, I was like, no, he's like one of my best managers. And he said, but every time he's on the shop floor, his head's down and he's not paying attention. He's running from one end to the other. And then I talked to that manager and I talked to him about it. He says, yeah, I'm so busy. I want to get stuff done. If I look up, I'm going to catch their eyes and they're going to want to talk. And then I'm not going to get my stuff done, And
Yeah.
so I think sometimes we think in leadership, or as a manager, we got so much to do, right? We want to be a doer. We want to get things done. But, it's about people, right? It's about taking the time and, okay, maybe I've got to work late tonight, right, to get my stuff done. But it means something to keep your eyes up, see who's paying attention and talk to them, because I think you leave the impression you don't care if you just kind of head down and run right through, So
Definitely.
Yeah.
As a new manager, I worked for the railroad out in the
Oh, wow.
Midwest. And as the one of the very first pieces of advice I got from my manager, he said, Max, there's a couple managers out here who just avoid the break room completely. They have to, you're supposed to have to walk through the break room to get to your office the way
Yeah.
our little terminal was set up. But guys would go around to the back door and kind of
Yeah.
scoot around
Yeah.
and not interact with any of the guys. And he said, don't you ever not walk through that break room to get to your office.
Yes.
You have to walk through and you have to talk to the employees.
Yes.
And I said,
Yes.
okay, roger that, I'll do it.
Yep.
It's just, like you said, it's a people business. And
Yes.
if
Yes.
you're not seeing your people and you're not
Yeah.
looking up at them, you're not engaging them, then what are you doing as a manager, right?
Right.
What are we here for?
Yeah, and I think you appear more authentic too. If you're there and, you have that interaction and they see that you're a real person, right? And they get to know you more, right? So, getting out and spending time with employees, it's not just about you seeing them, although that's important. It's about them seeing you as well. So, it's see and be seen when you're out, spending time in the break room or going out on the shop floor, and so they see that you care, right? You're out there because you care, and I'm busy, right? I'm a really busy guy with a startup company, and right now my head of sales actually has left, so I'm doing all the marketing and sales, all the quotations. So I'm really busy, but I make the time to push myself away from my desk, and I go wander the shop floor and I just talk to everybody. And even though I don't really have the time to do it, I just know it's important to do. So, yep.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you'd mentioned in our little pre-interview here
Yeah.
that individual contributors, right?
Yes.
There's a difference between an individual contributor and a leader.
Yes.
So I guess, how does someone go from being an individual contributor and then let's say they apply for a manager position and they get it?
Yes.
How do you make that shift, or how do you view somebody being effective as a leader coming from an individual contributor role?
Yes. So that's probably one of the biggest problems in corporate America is that people don't make that shift. So you might be a really good, say you're a really good purchasing person, right? A really good buyer. And then you catch the eye of management and they say, this person's a really good buyer. They're really good at supply chain. Let's make them supply chain manager. So they move into the supply chain manager role, right? They've got the title, but yet they go back to, writing purchase orders and calling vendors and the rest of the team is like, hey, what about us, right? So I think sometimes our comfort zone as an individual contributor is to do, like you're really good at doing things, but then you get promoted to being in charge of people to do those things. And so we kind of go back to our comfort zone of just doing those things again. And so I think we've got to do a better job helping individual contributors understand that you are no longer an individual contributor. You're no longer a doer. You're now a leader. And there are people that are looking to you to lead them, going forward, right? So that's the communicating and setting goals and motivating them properly, getting to know them. So helping them make that transition from doer to leader. That's something that I think we struggle with in corporate America because we take the best engineers and we'll make them engineering managers.
Right.
Every time,
Yeah, every
Not
time.
the best leader, the best engineer.
So how does somebody, let's say I'm a individual contributor who just got promoted into a supervisor role, not necessarily manager, but supervisor.
Yeah.
What do you think that employee should do in his first, 90 days on the job to prepare himself to lead? What do you think he should do?
Well, you should listen to my podcast. I just did an episode on that, what to do in your first 100 days.
Yep.
But so I think you must have heard that.
I did.
You led into it. But no, the first 100 days are critically important. And but I think the one thing, if I was going to give one piece of advice, and that is to do one-on-one meetings with everybody that works for you in your new role. And what I do when I take on a new job and a new role, leadership role, is I interview one-on-one with each one of my employees, and I ask 3 questions. I say, what is working? What is not working? And if you're in my shoes, what would you do differently? And what's great about those 3 questions is as you talk to people in different parts of the organization, you find that the answers are all very similar. And then what would you do if you were in my shoes? What would the first thing be? You find out that there's one big issue that needs to be addressed. And so similar to a consultant that comes into an organization, as a new leader, I come in and I basically have all the answers right at my fingertip, because all the knowledge to be successful in your organization resides in the heads of the employees that work there. And if you just take that time and you listen and you capture those ideas, you'll know best what the strengths are, what the weakness is, the opportunities, the threats, but you also know what needs to get done. And then the next thing I would say, secondary to listening and meeting one-on-one with everybody, is take the 1 or 2 things you hear from those meetings that needs to get done right away and do it.
Yeah.
And get it done. And so you instantly have respect from your team because they say, well, no, I told Jon that, and he listened and he took action, right? That's the kind of boss I want to work for, that listens and takes action, right? And doesn't just, give it lip service. So, those are, meeting one-on-one, getting a list of things that are going well and are going wrong, and then knowing kind of next steps and then taking action. Those are probably the biggest ones. And there's a lot more in my podcast, but those are the ones I would say I'd key in on.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's huge. Just getting to know your organization from the employee level, right? And then, because almost as being a new supervisor, you've got almost a blank slate, right? You might have a little bit of bias from being a frontline employee, but you're completely new to the management side of the house, and
Yes.
now you get to learn straight from the people who know the business best, like you just said.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, the answers to the business are right there at your fingertips, but you've got to reach out and you've got to ask and you've got to listen.
So I think so we're kind of coming to the end of our half hour here.
Sure.
I think that's what we were shooting for.
Yes.
So what I'd like to do, I've never really done this before, but I'd like to try a lightning round of questions.
Oh, gee.
So we'll do 10 questions, maybe take about a minute here.
Oh, gee.
And,
Okay.
surrounding fun leadership topics, maybe a
Okay.
little bit in a minute. So whenever I ask a question here, just try and think of the first answer that comes to your mind. If you're
Okay.
comfortable saying it, then throw it out there.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
I think.
Okay. So what leader inspires you the most?
Percy Barnevik, my first CEO.
What's your favorite leadership book?
First Break All the Rules, Marcus Buckingham.
Now, do you prefer audiobooks or paper books?
Audiobooks. I'm a commuter.
You're a busy guy. What are the first 3 things you do when you wake up in the morning?
I write. I get up at 4 every day. I write for an hour. I work out for an hour. Then I get ready. I feed the dogs, get ready for work, and go to work.
Excellent. What are the last 3 things you do before you go to bed?
Check social media.
There you go.
I do have a big Twitter following, so I think that's part of it.
All right. If you could have dinner with any leadership icon, who would you want to spend that dinner with?
Colin Powell.
Now, do you prefer to take notes by pen and paper, by your phone, or some other means?
Pen and paper.
Now, what are 3 of your guiding values in life?
Do what you say you're going to do. That's one.
The big one.
Leadership is a people business,
Yeah.
and leadership matters. So don't
Awesome.
forget that you matter. Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite leadership quote that you'd like to share with us today?
I won't say the whole quote, but the man in the arena has always been one that spoke to me, mostly because, I've felt like over the years, I've run 9 different manufacturing plants, so I've always felt like I've been the guy in the arena trying to make things happen. So,
Nice. Now, if there was one piece of advice as a parting word here, what would you want the audience to take away from this show? If there's one thing that you want them to take away, what would it be?
if you get an opportunity to lead, if you get an opportunity to get promoted into management, don't look at that lightly. So you have the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives and in your organizational performance. So don't take that lightly. Really get to know your people, treat them with respect, and your organization will do amazing things.
Awesome. I love it. So, Jon, thank you so much for this discussion. It's
Thank
been
you,
an
Max.
absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great.
I definitely got some awesome value, and I really think my audience is going to get some value from this. And but I want to make sure they can find you.
Yes.
On your social media that you work on at night right before bed.
Yes.
And then also maybe where they can go to buy your book and just
Yep.
how to get in touch with you. So you want to share with them some of those links?
Sure. My website is jonsrennie.com, and I'm probably most active on Twitter, so it's Jon S. Rennie, and that's John without an H. And if you're looking at the book, it's ihavethewatch.com, and there's links to get signed copies. You can also find it on Amazon. But so find me at jonsrennie.com, ihavethewatch.com, and on Twitter at Jon S. Rennie, and John with no H.
Awesome. And I'll make sure I put those in the show notes too, so everyone
Okay.
can just scroll right down on the episode details and you can find those links as well. So, Jon, this has been awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm really thankful for the time that you took to come on the show.
Thank you, Max. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into Commanding Leadership. Now, if you have any questions that you want me to answer on this podcast, feel free to text me at 508-964-3474, or you can find me on my website, commandingleadership.com. I'll see you on the next episode.